All right, good evening, everybody. Hey, we're going live over on the News 6 YouTube channel. This is meteorologist David Nazario here in the Digital Weather Center. And I should probably raise up my chair since I'm a vertically challenged individual. But hey, it's good to see everybody tonight. Thank you for those of you who are able to tune in. We're tracking some very heavy rainfall out there, as well as a severe thunderstorm warning that is active for northeastern Osceola County and the northern portion of Brevard County. We've got a very powerful thunderstorm working through just south of Cape Canaveral to the north of Vieira and Satellite Beach, where National Weather Service estimates, according to the radar, we could be seeing winds in excess of 60 miles an hour with that severe thunderstorm. And we also have several other reports of very heavy rainfall and very abundant accumulations occurring across western and central Florida. Now, I do have some good news. I'm kind of glad that we're going live when we are, because it does seem like computer models are finally catching up with this event. When you look at the radar right now and you notice, first and foremost, we've got that very large swath. It almost looks like a closed fan, or like an isosceles triangle back in your math class in geometry back in the day. And one thing I want to immediately point out is, if you notice, back behind the main swath of rainfall, we're really starting to see that clearing trend occur. And this is happening a lot faster than our computer models alluded to. And this is something I brought up during our 6:30 p.m. newscast, because I very quickly noticed that our computer models were very much so lagging behind what was actually happening real time. That's where that human element in meteorology comes in. You always want to examine what your computer models are doing and take a look at a lump sum of your computer models. Don't just rely on one. There's always going to be one that achieves a bit better than the others or performs a little bit better than the others, but you don't always want to lean on the one to get an idea of what the atmosphere is going to do. Now, let me get you up to speed. Good evening for those of you tuning in tonight. I see Heaven Can't Wait 1218, 16 Medic RN. It's good to see you all as well. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. Retro Americana, Berlinda Mustafa 1887, Corey Bethune 84, and we also have Golding Ferdy. Hope all is well. Good to see you tonight. I was wondering about this rain and if it will get this far south. It definitely is. Let me take you full screen once again, and I'll go ahead and bring us back over to our actual radar overlay. I'll close out the frame capture there at the bottom, and I'll go ahead and pull up our main panel there at the top just to show you what it is that's been going on out there, because we've got a lot of rainfall piling up once again in a very short bit of time. Now, if you look out in your Titusville, we have yet another aerial flood advisory in effect till about 9:15, so we have another hour with this aerial flood advisory. Now, just to get you up to speed on that, the big difference between an aerial flood advisory and a flash flood warning. Flash flooding means that there is a life-threatening event likely about to take place or already underway. With an aerial flood advisory, aerial being just in the area, we've got a little bit of ponding going on through frequently traveled areas, whether that be sidewalks or more especially roadways, densely populated urban areas, high traffic areas like freeways, roadways, interstates, big town plazas, outlets, neighborhoods, you name it. We're starting to see the waters coming up a little bit. That's what the aerial flood advisory is. When you see the flash flood warning come out, that means this is a life-threatening scenario that is preparing to unfold or already getting underway based on what caused that warning to be triggered. We also have that severe thunderstorm warning that we have out with us until 8:30 p.m., approximately 14 more minutes with that, for winds in excess of 60 miles an hour rocking through the Rockledge Satellite Beach area in central Brevard County. It did start in the northeastern periphery of Osceola County, and I do think that's what primarily triggered the warning, is it's been moving so fast off towards the east that when you couple the actual mass of the thunderstorm, just how much rainfall, the density of the updraft itself, because they carry some weight. Depending on the size and the strength of a thunderstorm, it's kind of like the varying strength behind a punch. You know, someone who doesn't really cock their fist and throw it at you hard enough, it's not going to pack much oomph. But if you have a prime Mike Tyson coming towards you and he gives you the right hook to the right uppercut, that might lay you out on the canvas. And in this case, we've had that one thunderstorm kind of overachieve amongst the rest, pick up a little bit of that forward speed and produce those 60-plus mile-an-hour winds. Now, on top of that, what we're looking at here, and I'll get my face out of the way, we're looking at our 6-hour rainfall totals. And let's go ahead and take a trip around Central Florida. First and foremost, I know this is outside of our viewing area, but I want to kind of take this in with all of us together. We do have a flash flood warning in effect for our Western Florida viewers out there. And you can see we've got about 3.5 inches in the last 6 hours just south of Holiday, 4.5 inches of rainfall, getting into Dade City about 3 inches, and then increasing as you get into southern Sumter and Lake County, about 2 inches on average. Through my neck of the woods in Upper Polk County, about 2 inches here and there. We had a special weather statement out in that general area as well for strong gusty winds upwards of 50 miles an hour. We really haven't seen the severe thunderstorm threat unfold today, and that's good news. When I was looking at a lot of the ingredients and the parameters that we would be dealing with today, nothing really jumped out at me, to tell you the truth, for a severe thunderstorm event. Was the marginal risk warranted? Absolutely. When you have a mess like this and the different mechanisms in play, 110%, go ahead and issue that puppy just so we've got some eyes on it, some situational awareness. But the main event for the day today and through the overnight hours into your Monday will remain the heavy rain, without a doubt. Kevin Hawthorne, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for everybody tuning in the chat right now. We got a little over 100 viewers out there over on the News 6 YouTube channel. Please feel free to share this live stream. I'm going to stay up with you at least until that severe thunderstorm warning gets up out of here. And to tell you the truth, we should start to see a bit of a clearing trend as we go through the next, I want to say, 3 to 6 hours. So perhaps by our 11 o'clock newscast, we will start to see some things improving. Now, we do still have some very strong stuff coming in on what I believe is probably the leading edge of where that cool air is finally going to sweep through and begin to flush things out. But with the way everything is continuing to track, I think we're going to ride the bottom halves of Polk, Osceola, and maybe south of Satellite Beach and Palm Bay as this continues to rock off towards the east and southeast. A large majority of the rest of us, when you look towards the north, and I'll zoom us out for a pretty good perspective here. I'll get this out of the way so you can see a little bit more. From about the Daytona Beach area all the way down to maybe the Four Corners County line. Wow, look at that straight line. I did pretty good for myself right there. If you were to go from where I have that straight line drawn and continue towards the north, we've transitioned to more of that light to moderate rainfall, just steady state rainfall. Shouldn't be seeing a tremendous amount of winds. Clearly, as you can see on the radar here, we've dropped a lot of the consistent lightning strikes out there, and that's where we're going to get into the lesser extent of what this weather event has to offer. If you're on the leading edge, the nose of it all, down in through here, this is where we could still see some gusty winds, possible power outages, either due to that frequent cloud-to-ground lightning or those straight-line winds coming off of these thunderstorms. I was actually surprised, I'll tell you the truth. I'll show you all right now. Let me go ahead and pull that up for you. I was actually surprised to see the amount of power outages that we do have out there. I'll take you full screen. We've got some customers in the West Central Florida DMA with some power outages where this event more or less kicked off. It does look like that severe thunderstorm in Brevard County has knocked out power for some customers out there. We also have some power outages being reported in Seminole County and then Polk County as well, where we had that special weather statement earlier this evening with the somewhere between 40 to 50 mile an hour winds coming off of that line of cells that came out of Palm Harbor, Largo, Tampa Bay, and moved through the northern half of Polk County. Doesn't look like anyone, or I should say it looks like everybody in Lake and Sumter County came out unscathed from that event earlier as well, and now it does look like we've seen some of those power outages bleed over to our eastern counties in way of Seminole and Brevard, and it's all thanks to this bad boy right here. You can see all the frequent lightning coming off of that. Let me get this severe out of the way. We'll go to the Melbourne radar. Make sure we're not in the cone of silence there for my Twister fans. So this is it. We're definitely losing a little bit of our luster with this thunderstorm. If you notice, there is really no uniform line to it. And in fact, I would not be surprised if National Weather Service either canceled this warning or just let it ride, since we're coming up on the 9-minute mark until this thing goes out. So they are probably going to let it expire, and we are going to get on the back side of this where things will start to cool off and the winds will taper. You could see right around in through here, that's probably where the nose or the leading edge of those strongest winds are. Remember when I'd mentioned that this is kind of like a punch being thrown at you in the boxing ring? You have just an acceleration of all this water and air in the atmosphere, and right on the leading edge of that is where you get hit by those winds first, and they just continue to trail off the further behind it you get. Just like a wave you'd see coming at the beach. You see it kind of crest as it gets closer to the shoreline, and then once it crashes, it very rapidly loses its height. And no, it's not gone for Orlando. We're going to be in the rainfall for the downtown Orlando area for a little while longer. It's moving. We're definitely seeing some pretty good progress. I'll give you the last 30 minutes, and you can see as the area of low pressure that's guiding all this continues to pick up speed, we're going to clear out. And you can definitely see that I want to say if we were to keep moving everything in its current course and on its current speed, we're probably going to be done with this before the 11 o'clock newscast. Off towards the southeast, on the leading edge, the front end of this swath of rain, the shield as we like to call it, all this stuff, this is going to continue to propagate and wander off towards the east and the southeast. We're going to have to watch these upcoming bands in through here to see if we get another severe thunderstorm warning issued, because it does look like they're going to get into the point in their life cycle where they will start to pick up that forward speed and try to pump out a bit of an additional wind gust or two, as opposed to what they may be dumping on in the areas that they're affecting right now. Let me go ahead and pull my face back up. I'm going to take some questions in the chat real quick. Pardon me. Jensen Beach definitely has a chance to see some of this, because remember, we're looking at the Melbourne radar right now. If we were to transition off to the south, you still have all this back behind it here. We just can't see it because we're getting very far from the radar. So we still have to take the tail end of all this and push it across the state. And in fact, I would argue that down here is probably where we have the greatest likelihood of seeing stronger winds and maybe a bit more put together thunderstorms, just because of the fact that we're getting further into the warm sector, the warm side of where our frontal boundary got stuck yesterday. Last night when I came into work to do our evening newscasts, you could see from 1,000 miles away that the stationary front had gotten stuck pretty much right over top Central Florida like this. The further south you go, the warmer it will be. Last night I pulled up the temperatures and the dew point temperatures to show the difference in moisture on either side, the north and south side of the front, and there was almost a 10 to 15 degree difference between folks up there in Gainesville, Ocala versus, say, Lakeland, Kissimmee, Rockledge, Palm Bay. And where you see that gradient, the discontinuity between the temperatures, as you take those drier, colder values and drag it across the warmth, that's when you start to aggravate the environment a little bit more. You get stronger storms out of it. And notice that a lot of our strongest stuff is happening well to the south of my line that's drawn there. Debbie, could you give me a little bit more specificity in your question, please? More rain for the northeast. Northeast where? Because, again, in the northeast portion of Central Florida, we're getting into the lighter stuff now. It's still steadily raining up there, but we're definitely out of all the more hellacious activity. Driving on the 528 headed east, close to 95, yes. Yes, if you're close to Interstate 95, you are definitely into the worst of it now, especially if you're coming in on the 528. I would absolutely say yes, because as that leading edge of it continues to trek towards the east and southeast, it's going to kind of move in this sort of a fashion where my dotted lines are being drawn. That's what I'm hoping for, too, to tell you the truth. I'm hoping that we don't see waters pile up too fast. It does not seem like we have the impressive rain rates that we saw during our actual flood event weeks ago when we saw the areas pile up anywhere between 10, 12, even 15 to 18 inches. Because if you take a look, and I bring us back to the rainfall totals, we'll go to the last 12 hours just to kind of take it all in and get an assessment of when this first started earlier today up until now. And if you notice, in the areas underneath the flash flood warning, we, over the last 12 hours, have only picked up 4 to 5 inches of rain. And I know that may sound silly of me to say only 4 to 5 inches. That's definitely more than enough to cause flooding. But here's the kicker. Since we're starting to see things move, we'll only start to pick up the pace from here on in. It's not like as the rains get moving, they're suddenly going to slow down again. The wheels of motion have started to turn, and as a result, that's why we're starting to see a little bit more of the gusty winds, because things are speeding up. And the rain rates, if you look in the last 12 hours, they're heaviest out here, but then the further east you go, despite the same style of rains, the same column of thunderstorms, the same swath of water, basically, as it moves across the peninsula. Notice how closer to Titusville, Orlando, we're starting to get up in those rainfall totals, but nothing near as close as to what we've seen along the Gulf Coast of Florida. If I had to give you an early estimate, Elizabeth, a great question. She asks, how much longer are we under this? I want to say at least another 2 to 4 hours max. Another 2 hours we've got to give it to let these stronger thunderstorms subside, where we're seeing those more heavy amounts of rains dumping on certain areas. And then we've got another additional 2 to 3 hours of some lingering rain showers back behind where those stronger thunderstorms have already worked their way through. I did notice, and I'm going to pull us over to our computer model real quick, our in-house Barron model. I want to show you something. And it looks like, actually, as a matter of fact, we're getting updates left and right. There you go. This is the newest Level 1 risk from Storm Prediction Center. So I hope this answers some of your questions out there. If you're north of I-4 on the northern fringe of Brevard County into Seminole, Volusia, Flagler, Lake Sumter, Marion counties, and the northwestern half, if you cut a diagonal line through Orange County, we are now out of that severe risk. We're out of it. It looks like Storm Prediction Center updated this during our live discussion, because I had just snipped this and attached it to my latest weather update, and it still had the entirety of our viewing area smothered by the green shade there. Now you can see we've cut that in half. So Storm Prediction Center is seeing exactly what we're seeing. We're getting things to pick up the speed, which is good news. And that's why I don't think we're going to see as immense of heavy rainfalls piling up like we saw during some of our previous training events. I want to show you the current winds as well, because I've been tracking the progression of the low that's going to be steering all of this. See if I can pull this up. There we go. So you can see we are starting to see that low pressure moving down towards the south and east. When I first came in earlier this afternoon, that puppy was beginning to develop somewhere out here. We had a bit of a counterclockwise spin firing up, and now it has moved off towards the southeast. Back behind it, where you see the winds funneling in out of the north, that's all your dry, more stable air. So the faster this thing can rocket across central Florida, the faster we're going to be over and done with. And it's moved a pretty good amount of distance in the last, it's 8:30 right now. I got here around 2 this afternoon. So in about the last 6 hours, we've gone from here to here. So in another 6 hours, if we continue to move it and maybe even pick up a little bit of forward progress, we're going to be through this by about 2 a.m. We should be just about all said and done almost entirely. There is a small potential for tornadoes. I don't see a huge risk. We do have decent winds as you go up in the atmosphere. If you were to go straight up vertically, there are winds that could try to produce a little bit of spin in the more aggressive thunderstorms that try to climb up fast in terms of their height, but we just don't have the dynamics to really get them to fire up that strong. And that's why I think we're seeing more of the winds and the rainfall right now, just because everything is finally starting to get some progress. Now, I don't want us to take our foot off the throttle, because since we do have this mechanism here, a low pressure system that's going to spin across the state, my sentence kind of implied there, we're going to have a little extra spin kind of entangled within our local weather pattern. Let me go ahead and pull up that latest clouds and rain forecast for you. So this was the latest update from the 0Z model run. If you look at the top there, it says 8 p.m. in the timestamp. That's when you can kind of more or less determine when the model came in. This is our most recent run, came out maybe 30 to 45 minutes ago. And you can see early on in the run, it's actually doing pretty poorly. If you take a mental snapshot of all the rain that this is predicting for 8 p.m., and then you look at the actual radar here, it would probably help if I had the actual reflectivity pulled up. There you go. Zoom us out so we can get a better view. That severe thunderstorm warning has officially gone out as well, by the way. It looks like that has been discontinued. But if you take a look at what's actually happening on the radar versus when I pull us back to the computer model, a night and day difference. And this is what I had mentioned earlier on in the live discussion. You don't always want to put your eggs all in one basket. You want to continue to monitor. You want to compare and contrast what's actually going on outside. Look out the window and then take a look at your computer model. Don't start with the model and then try to tell people what's happening outside their windows. I like to do the opposite, especially during an event that's ongoing. You got to take a look outside and see what's really happening, get a feel for what is occurring in the atmosphere, and then take a look at how your models are handling what you're seeing. Because if I were to look at this and go off of this solely and brief you the forecast, this looks like we're in for some chop for at least another 12 hours. This is probably going to linger with us until sunrise. But then when you look at the actual radar here, half the viewing area is already done. Gainesville, Ocala, Lake and Sumter counties are just about all wrapped up. Flagler County's just about all done. Volusia County's counting down to the end here. We're in that more lighter rainfall now at this point. And it does look like our more organized complex of thunderstorms is starting to weaken as well. We're just losing whatever daytime heating that we had earlier this afternoon is finally starting to dissipate. This is the area that we're going to have to start watching now. And in fact, I'm going to switch us to our Tampa Bay radar so we can see what's happening further to the south. There we go. So yeah, it looks like Southwest Florida's got some pretty gnarly stuff headed in. These are the areas you'll have to watch that's off the coast there. These little guys right along the line there, the leading edge of the line, those are the ones that could pop some water spouts over open water or possibly try to pop a tornado as they come ashore. When you come towards the north here and look at our area, though, you can see the clusters of stronger storms are really starting to lose their luster, and they're more reaching towards the south now. So we're almost done. We're definitely almost done. Not with the rain altogether, but with the worst that the threats have to offer, we're almost done. I would definitely say we'll hold that forecast that we came up with together earlier on in the stream another 2 hours until the worst is just about over, and then maybe roughly another 2 to 3 hours of some rain out there, more steady rainfall. As we get into Monday morning, especially for our southern counties, we're going to have some straight lingering rain showers just because of how much moisture we've had out there. And that's another reason why I don't really see any big-time severe weather occurring with this, because when you look at something called a skew-T, this is a tool that we meteorologists use to get an idea of what's going on in the weather from the surface where we are all the way up. You kind of take a slice of the atmosphere like a multi-layered cake and take a look at all the insides of it. You ever play the game Operation back in the day where you got to find all the pieces and pick different parts of the body out? Kind of like an autopsy of the atmosphere, basically. And there's just so much water in the air that the heavy rain makes sense. Some isolated instances of strong winds because of the front coming down and that low pressure makes sense. But I really didn't see anything major happening throughout the day, and it's very great to see that we really haven't seen anything intense. Lots of rainfall, but for a lot of us, it's much needed rainfall, especially as the drought tried to creep back up during these more persistent periods of dry weather out there. It's going to be kind of the same song and dance for the next 5 days after this as well. Once we get through this, we've got a little bit of a lull. The midsections of the upcoming week here are going to be fairly pleasant. No rain, clearing skies, and it won't be until Friday into Saturday we get a little bit of an uptick in the rain department as we await the arrival of our next frontal system. So before we get ready to wrap up, I want to take some questions, but then I'm going to go ahead and jump off here, preserve my voice. A couple more tidbits of good news. It does look like in the most recent updates here on the radar, we have let that aerial flood advisory go out for the Orlando, Orange County area. And you can see we're almost done. Claremont, you're starting to clear up now. Altamont Springs, you're coming right up next. So Lake County, you're just about finished. Some lingering light rains moving through Leesburg right now, but nothing crazy. You guys are on the weaker side of this setup. I'd say a large majority of us here in the Central Florida viewing area are on the weaker side now. The greatest threats are going to be hanging out through southern Polk, Osceola, and Brevard. Down here is where I'm going to keep my eyes to see if anything does try to percolate a little bit more. Now, that's an excellent question. CCNH6GT asks, does that line coming into the Gulf look like it's going to go straight across or follow the current storms? Kind of a bit of both. So because they're attached to a front and a low pressure, they are going to ride the boundary and follow that because that's the trigger. That's what's causing all this. But they will also altogether uniformly move southeasterly. So the flow of the storms along the front will be more easterly, kind of headed up like this, east-northeast, like you're seeing on radar. But because of the whole big piece of the weather pattern there that's moving southeast, it'll track. Everything will get pulled down towards the southeast. I hope that makes sense. No, tomorrow we're going to see a clearing trend. I think for the first 3 to 6 hours after sunrise, we're going to have some lingering rains. Nothing wild. Just some light to sporadic rain showers out there. And then by about noon to 2 p.m., that's when all of us are going to start clearing out. Our winds are going to change to more of a northerly component. And then the skies are going to begin to clear up. Dry air is going to come in. And then forecast high temperatures for tomorrow only in the low to mid 70s. And then the next day, Tuesday morning, starting on a little bit of a chillier note with highs in the upper 60s, low 70s, as well as this front finally moves all the way through. Asherus Swift Wind, I'm sorry about that, says just had half a neighbor's tree fall in the driveway here in Conway after a big old gust of wind. No damage to house or cars, power lines, but they aren't driving out in the morning. That's unfortunate. Going to probably take a little bit of time to clear that out of the way, but thank goodness that nobody or nothing got hit. That's the tricky part about all these heavier rains in certain areas. Conway is part of the area that did pick up a lot of rainwater during some of our heavy rain events of old over the last 2 months. That's the give and take with these types of scenarios. It could be dry for a while, but that doesn't mean that the actual ground itself has released or lost a lot of the water that it's previously picked up. And then all of a sudden you dump what looks to be a bucket of water on that same area, loosens everything up. It's kind of like how when you see roadways that have been around for several years, they look good one day, then all of a sudden a big rain event occurs, and then the next thing you know, you drive out the following day, there's potholes everywhere. Same concept. That's why things, when they loosen up, and then even the smallest little puff of wind, you're suddenly knocking over large trees. I can already imagine the road next to my neighborhood is very prone to potholes. I would not be surprised if even tonight, the few folks who have driven across it, especially in Polk County where we've picked up some of the heavier rainfall, probably going to have to be dodging mines out there as I get in tonight because the roadway is probably going to be perked up with all sorts of little craters and new potholes. So if I don't have any additional questions, we're going to go ahead and drop off the live stream. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. It does seem like the worst is just about over. I'm going to continue to watch how much rain we pick up in certain spots, but thank goodness it looks like National Weather Service is also seeing the dissipating rainfall rates, how much water is falling at certain spots in Central Florida. Not right now, as far as I can tell, as far as what our models are alluding to with our next storm system, does not seem like heavier rains are coming. This is probably going to be one of our heavier rain events for a little while now, but I'll also do some digging and some investigating since we'll be doing this all again this time next weekend with the next front, only it could be more of a Friday into Saturday kind of biased event as opposed to Saturday into Sunday. Or in this case, Sunday into Monday, more or less. It's how long it's taken for this to finally pick up some movement. CCNH6GT, you're very welcome. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. Please stick close to your News 6 Plus app. Check us out at 11 o'clock for your 11 p.m. newscast. I'll have the full breakdown and the latest information on everything that's happening out there. And I'll go ahead and take a look. For those of you curious as to what Friday and Saturday may have in store for us, I'll do some digging once we jump off the stream here, and I'll have some details on that at the 11 o'clock newscast as well. So definitely tune in. I'd love to have you. It's always great to talk weather with everybody. So have a great rest of your evening. Stay safe out there. Keep in touch. Feel free to drop me a line over on email or drop a comment at the bottom of this live discussion upon its conclusion. And I'll go ahead and set a reminder on my phone to check it out after a couple hours have gone by. I'm going to have the radar up in front of me all the way leading up to our 11 o'clock newscast, and I hope to see you there. But until next time, folks, if you've watched any previous live stream line, you know the phrase. This is the Digital Weather Center, signing out.